In 1993, when Dazed and Confused came out, 1976 felt like a very different era. It seems like a 2024 film set in 2007 wouldn't seem nearly as jarring as the film's jump. Why do you think that is? I think it's because of things like the internet. People are able to, and still do, interact with old culture with a lot of frequency, while back in the day when something passed it was basically gone. I think this has caused cultural progress to become a lot more inert. It's a similar deal with GTA Vice City 2002 taking place in the 1986. That would be equivalent to a game today taking place in 2008. I could be wrong, but I feel like 1976 cars and fashion compared to 1993 cars and fashion had a way bigger gap than 20,072,024 cars and fashion. Pre- and post-internet are entirely different worlds. The internet flattens time and space. Subcultures and trends get zero time to develop organically before they get hoovered up, packaged, ipped, and sold back to us. You'd think that would produce more variety and change, but instead it stifles, flattens, and turns everything into the same gray goo. Fashion, I think, is the big thing. Even people who didn't care about what they wore on the 70s still adhered to trends because they were so all-encompassing that's all you could buy. Fashion is way more fractured now, and people rarely dress up or follow any trend that defines an era. Some for sure do, but it's minority compared to the larger demographic. Whereas in the 70s pretty much everyone looked like they were in the 70s. Smartphones and smartphone cameras have introduced a type of homogeneity across the planet. Honestly, even when I travel now it can be hard to tell that you left home. For example, a microbrewery with hipster beards is available in any country with minor variances. That's what I love about these 2000s, man. I keep getting older, they feel like the same age. Honestly, I think that it being less jarring is due to things like the internet and other technology. The change from 76 to 93 had a massive increase in available technology. Personal computers had become a thing, we learned what the internet was, cell phone and car phones had just started coming out, we became more interconnected. Cars were in the middle of a shift from muscle cars and small imports to minivans and trucks. The difference between 2024 and 2007 is far less jarring, because when it comes to tech and things around us not much has changed. The smartphone took off, the internet has adapted to that, e-commerce took off. These aren't really visible things, but more personal. Not much else around us has changed besides some fashion. I don't know, as a 31-year-old, when I watch movies like Mean Girls or American Pie it brings me right back to the era I grew up in, and it doesn't feel anything like 2024. This is why I love sci-fi that doesn't change a bunch of useless things for the sake of the future. If you look at classic sci-fi from the 30s, 50s, it was all very retro-futuristic, with flying cars, robot servants, jetpacks, floating cities, etc. Sci-fi in the 60s onward became more and more hard, with the crazier stuff being relegated to things like Star Wars and Star Trek. That's why I love movies like Looper, Children of Men, or movies set in the future where everything is still the same except for consumer electronics. People are still going to live in wooden houses. Houses will still look the same materials, same designs. But you'll notice more and more fancier electronics gadgets. Everything in the home will become smart. Cars will become smarter. But cities will always look like they do now. Unless we discover some new, awesome, previously undiscovered material, we'll still be using wood and cement 200,300 years from now. Culture was changing a lot faster then. The difference between 1950 and 1970 is even bigger. In contrast, you wouldn't know the difference between the year 600 and the year 800 in most places. Perception of time is something you'll never understand. As a child of the 70s, whenever I looked back at pictures of an event like, say, the day of the Kennedy assassination, it seemed so different and so far in the past. But now, as an adult, it is disorienting to consider that it was less than a decade before I was born. Even today it feels crazy to me that 2004 was 20 years ago, as it hardly feels that distant. Getting older is very strange. You're just older and have more perspective. Back to the Future would go all the way back to 1994. Cultural change was just moving a lot faster in the period 1968 to 1995 than it has 1998 to 2005. You experienced 2007 to 2024. If you weren't around in 1986, then you didn't feel how 1986 transitioned into 1993. Because this time, you're the one that is old. So for perspective, the first iPhone was released in June of 2007. So a movie that takes place in the first half of 2007 would be void of smartphones. Social media wasn't popular. Music was still on CDs. Rock and metal were on the radio, and people still listen to the radio. I think it would be more jarring than you think. I was a HS freshman in 1976. When I saw that movie, I asked myself, WTF is this? Nothing in my experience was as depicted in that. Same problem with Back to the Future, really. Marty today would go back to 1994. A white heterosexual Californian wouldn't really find a lot of difference other than wow, gas is really cheap, and wow, cell phones really suck.